Ladies and gentlemen, the Newton Nomadic Theater presents Story Slam.
So, David and I were sitting at Felipe's restaurant in Harvard Square. We were having a light dinner, and it was a late dinner as well. Felipe's is really popular with Harvard students, and it's very crowded and very loud. And this was the day before David was due to fly to Germany to be with his girlfriend, Laura. And he was really struggling if whether or not this was the right thing to do, because David was originally from Colombia, and he has dark brown hair and dark brown eyes and light brown skin. And he had visited Laura a year earlier in Germany. She's blonde with a German family, and they were all very supportive of their relationship. But to be out in public, people would mistake David for a Syrian refugee. And so he just wasn't always comfortable. And he was debating as to whether or not he should go back to Colombia rather than go to Germany and be with Laura and be with her family and learn German and all of these things he had kind of set himself out to do. And it was clear to me what the right thing to do was, but it wasn't my choice to make. And I wanted to persuade him to go to Germany because that seems like change. And even if his relationship with Laura didn't work out, at least it would be a step forward, whereas returning back to Colombia and just resuming the life he'd had before didn't seem like a step forward. If nothing else, it was just staying put. And part of the problem was that he didn't feel like Laura had been listening to him and listening to his concerns, and his concerns were real, and he just didn't know what would become of him if he went to Germany. And they had been fighting every day. Like, they'd had a relationship for a couple of years, and it was a long-distance relationship where she went to visit him in Colombia, he went to visit her in Germany. They both came to visit both of us in Cambridge. And in between were essentially daily Skype calls. It was a technology that kept their relationship going. And lately, the daily Skype calls were daily arguments, daily fights. And he's telling me all of this, and he's not sure if he's going to be able to get on the plane. And I told him that it is amazing to me that he and Laura are able to communicate in English, because that was neither of their first languages. Like, David grew up speaking Spanish, she grew up speaking German, and English was their common tongue. And I was like, my husband and I, we grew up in New England, and we miscommunicate in English all the time. And I can't imagine what it's like to try to deal with any sort of nuance when it's not your native language. And so I had been through a lot of therapy, and that's a different story. So one of the things that I wanted to help David with was this technique called active listening, where you literally have to repeat back to someone what they just said to you. And part of it is so that you can be sure that you actually heard them. And part of it is to pause, is to give you time to stop. Because most people actually form a response while they're supposedly listening to what someone is saying. Because they have to be out there and say that thing that's coming up in their mind because it's so important. And so active listening is to, since you have to say back to someone what they just said to you, you're taking a break. And then you get to respond. And so I'm like, well, maybe you could use this technique with Laura. Maybe you can communicate better, more effectively with Laura if you were to do this. And he was like, okay. And I said, well, you can't just, it's not an intellectual thing. You have to practice it. Why don't we practice it now, here at Felipe's? Like, I'll be Laura, you be David, and let's just do this. And it'll, that way you'll be more prepared. And he was like, okay. And so he began, and he said, honey, it bothers me when you're with your friends and you sit with your legs spread open. And I said, okay, I heard you say that it bothers you when I'm with my friends and I sit with my legs open. Is that right? And he said, yes. And I said, well, when I'm with my friends, I am comfortable and this is how I like to sit. And when I am in a different setting, like maybe with my grandmother, I will sit in a more formal way. But that's not who I am. That's not me being relaxed and comfortable. Wouldn't you like me to be relaxed and comfortable? And he said, yes. I said, okay. And he said, well, it bothers me that you still have photographs of your German boyfriend on your computer, even when you knew it bothered me and I asked you to delete them and you said you would and you didn't. And I said, okay, I heard you say that it bothered you that I still have the pictures of my German boyfriend on my computer, even though I knew it bothered you and you asked me to delete them and I said I would, but I didn't. And he said, yes. And I said, well, I shouldn't have lied to you because I knew I wouldn't delete them because they're part of my history and it is important to me and I never should have made a promise that I knew I couldn't keep. But it is part of my history because you are my boyfriend. He's not. And so you should be secure in that. I've chosen you over him. And he said, okay. And then he said that it bothers him that he was uncomfortable with how much I've been drinking when we're out in public, and he didn't want his woman to act like that. And I said, let's get one thing clear. First of all, I am not your woman. I am an adult. I am able to make my own choices, and I choose to be with you. And if I don't choose to be with you, that is also my choice. And he said, uh-huh. And I said, secondly, you're going to have to drop this Latin macho bullshit, because I'm not going to put up with it. And he had a tear in his eye, and he said, you sound just like Laura. And what I wanted out of that moment, most of all, was to be with the couple sitting next to us who were trying to figure this out, because they couldn't hear all of it, but they heard enough. And David did get on the plane, and he's with Laura still. Thank you.
So thank you all for coming.